Hello, it's the Degenerate. I am back with a college football best bet for week 5. We're almost halfway through the season. Cherish this because before you know it, we're going to have to be talking about the Indiana Pacers and fucking Toronto Raptors. Anyways, week 5, best bet, 2-2 on the year. Just to take you back real quick, week 1, Michigan State minus 11.5 at home against FAU. Loser. Week 2, Army faded FAU again. On the road, Army plus 3.5 dog outright winner. Week 3, Central Michigan. Weird fucking game. Plus 20, they lose by 21. Loser. And then last week was the under in Tennessee, Oklahoma. I didn't make a video for it. Rather, I just clipped it. My pitch and Jovan and Steak were on the board review. Everybody co-signed, and that one was a winner. So 2-2 on the year. I've been doing 2 units on these plays. Obviously, with the juice, I am down a little bit of money. Looking to get right here. So I'm going to be honest with you. Going into this weekend, I had a pretty tough time coming up with the best bet. What I liked the most was my beloved Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, I get a little concerned sometimes as a fan of Notre Dame. Don't forget, I do have a Notre Dame tattoo, which I got when I was 18. Give me a break. No, I didn't go to school there. Anyways, I have a hard time giving out my best bet when it's the team that I'm a fan of because you think there's always a little bit of bias. However, I'm not really a biased fan. There's a lot of reasons that I like Notre Dame coming into the week. They are an official play for us in the newsletter. And if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, please do. TheDegenerateWeekly.com. You can subscribe for free. And for those that pay, thank you very much for supporting our work. We greatly appreciate it. We had a great weekend in college football. Not good in NFL, but we were 5-0 in our plays in college football. We're having a pretty solid season, knock on wood, not getting cocky or complacent by any means. But I'd like to sustain that success. I'm going to keep a best bet at least every weekend. And I had a really tough time figuring out what my best bet was going to be because I tried to find something else from one of our plays. And then as we were going through the board on the board review today, it hit me. And I got to tell you what, I can't believe I didn't really think about it sooner. And let me tell you why I got spooked off of this game at first. And maybe that's why it took me a second to come back around. But my best bet for this weekend in college football, week 5, is BYU Baylor first half under 23.5. I'm seeing it's minus 110 at FanDuel right now. So when I looked at this game, it stood out like a sore thumb to me that you think the wrong team is favored. Baylor, I don't know where they opened. Depending on where you look, I think they may have been +1, +1.5. Well, they are now a minus 3-point favorite against BYU, who is now ranked 22nd in the nation, depending on where you look. BYU is the ranked team getting 3 points. Now, of course, this is a system we've talked about for years if you've been following me, more so in college basketball. But an unranked favorite against a ranked opponent, typically the unranked team, the team that you or I or the betting public would think is the wrong team favored. The wrong team tends to do pretty well. Now, I wanted to get there with Baylor, right? That's just how I gamble. That's how I'm hardwired. That's in my DNA. But I took a step back and I said, I don't want anything to do with that game. We call that fake sharp, right? It's sharp by definition, meaning the line went from +1, +1.5 to now -3. Well, the Sharps liked it at +1, +1.5. I don't know that they like them at -3. And I'll tell you what, I'm okay staying off this game. You know why I'm okay staying off this game? Because I think BYU might be a good team. I don't know about great, but I think they're a good team. Now, clearly, after what BYU just did, if you're not familiar, they beat Kansas State. They were a touchdown underdog, beat Kansas State at home outright 38-9. It was a little bit of a wacky game. I think there was a punt return for a touchdown and maybe a special teams touchdown. A fumble return for a touchdown, a special teams touchdown. But holding Avery Johnson in Kansas State to 9 points is incredible. Now, I know that the jury's out on Avery Johnson being a little bit of a fraud, as I know we've had Jovan reference that in the offseason. Seems to be a pretty good call. But they still do have a pretty good rushing attack, and they still have a potent offense you think could score some points. So BYU coming off of a game and a win like that, you'd think that maybe we would want to fade BYU because it's a letdown spot. But at the same time, if you look at the spot Baylor is in, I don't know that it's much better. And here's why. They were just beating Colorado on the road in Colorado, 31-24. and they allowed a Hail Mary, a 43-yard Hail Mary, to tie the game as time expired. That's devastating. It's not necessarily a letdown as in, oh, wow, there was the highest of high and you're celebrating and you're walking around like your shit doesn't stink all week. But that's something. You blow that game, you go into overtime, you lose, you come back home. Now, head coach Dave Aranda, however you pronounce it, some people are saying he might be coaching for his job. I'm not going to speculate on whether that is or isn't the case. But what I can tell you is this. There's an argument to be had for either side. I'm not going to get involved. But when I started to think about it, I really started to think about the total. Instead of just staying off this game, I like the under. I like the under in this game for a couple of reasons. Let me tell you why. Let's start with BYU. First and foremost, BYU's defense is good. The offense, I don't know. I'm not totally sold on the offense. I watched BYU play SMU in week 2. Let me pull it up just so I don't misquote this. I watched this game in week 2. Now, if you don't remember, SMU is a team with a lot of hype and expectations coming into this season. I believe they started their quarterback, Preston Stone, who was their starter last year. They had a high win total. They were kind of a sleeper pick for a lot of people to win the ACC. Well, Preston Stone has been benched. They have a new guy playing now, and I think they're doing just fine. They just beat the shit out of TCU. But in this game, BYU came in, and it was ugly for SMU to start. I think they made a quarterback switch. Maybe there was an injury. Don't quote me. But when I watched BYU play, I wasn't necessarily overly impressed with their offense. But from being an 11.5, 10.5 point dog, whatever they were in that game, they won it outright. They won it 18-15. I was very impressed by their defense. That defense was disciplined, tough, nasty, and they fucking tackled well. That form tackling got me so fired up. I even tweeted about it live during the game. Nothing gets me more fired up than seeing some good old low pad level, square up, eyes up, fucking drive your hands, wrap up, take them to the ground. It was incredible. You'd think BYU might slip up at some point in their schedule, given that they've gone on the road. Actually, I'll take you through their schedule. They started the year playing SIU. They won 41-13. No big deal. I don't even know who that is. Could be Southern Indiana, Illinois, whatever. I'm not going to spend the time to figure it out. But then they went on the road in SMU. They won 18-15. After that game, they had to go to Wyoming. They had to go to Wyoming to play Wyoming the week before Kansas State. Now, we almost made Wyoming a play in that game, getting the points at home. Ended up not doing it. And we also ended up finding out the entire world, or at least our community that we follow, everybody was on Wyoming, and everybody got duped. The reason we stayed off, or I stayed off at least, is because BYU is pretty fucking good. They impressed me. They passed the eyeball test. Any best bet I make, I try to get the eyeball test. Pass or fail. Pass or fail. Army passed it. I watched Army and Lehigh highlights before I made that my best bet. Central Michigan, not so much passing the eyeball test, but Illinois didn't pass my eyeball test in the win against Kansas the week before. Shit bet. I was wrong. What are you going to do? Oklahoma defense passed my eyeball test. Jackson Arnold did not pass my eyeball test. You get what I'm saying here? BYU's defense is for real. So this is what they've done. They went on the road. They allowed 15 points in a win against SMU. Then they went on the road, back-to-back road games against Wyoming. They allowed 14 points to Wyoming. Now, Wyoming is very bad. Don't get me wrong. Then they turn around. They go at home against Kansas State. And I saw a lot of people on BYU. Don't get me wrong. Smart people I respect. I was nervous about betting BYU. I took the under in the game, and it got hairy. It got hairy because of all these wacky touchdowns. I believe it was like under 47, 48.5, and it just stayed under. BYU won the game 38-9. So let's run that back. So far this season, BYU's defense has allowed 13, 15, 14, and 9 points. You know what I think? I think it's going to be tough for BYU to turn right around. Third road game in 4 weeks to go into a hostile place like Baylor and put forth their best effort. However, they have a bye next week. This team with a good head coach has to be beyond motivated to get into that fucking bye week, give it one more good push with a win and be undefeated. I do think they're going to be motivated. However, I am not concerned by the offense. And I do think that they get out to a slow start, but I think the defense has that inspiration and that motivation to show up and play well. Now, flip side, let's talk about Baylor. Bit of a different story. They are not undefeated. They are 2-2. So Baylor beat a nobody in week 1. Then they went on the road against Utah. We actually had Baylor plus 15.5 in that game. We got pretty lucky to cover because Cameron Rising and Utah came out and they scored 14 points in the blink of an eye. Granted, they benefited from a Baylor fumble on their own 3-yard line, but still, Baylor was down quick. However, Cameron Rising did go out, and then Baylor shut out Utah the rest of the way. They covered, but they lost. They lost 23-12. Baylor comes back at home. They play Air Force. They win 31-3. In both home games Baylor has played, they have allowed one field goal in each game. Granted, it's been Air Force and fucking Tarleton State, okay? So I'm not really focusing on that quite as much. But then Baylor goes on the road and plays Colorado. Now, you're going to look at this score and you're going to say, holy fuck, they allowed 38 points to Colorado. But did they really allow 38 points to Colorado? I don't necessarily think so. They allowed 17 points in the first half. In the second half of that game, essentially, they allowed Colorado to score one time. Personally, I think on the road for this Colorado offense, if you hold them to 24 points at home, that's kind of a win. And then they lose the game in devastating fashion. Here's the concern I have, obviously. How does Baylor bounce back from that? That's got to be pretty tough. But I still think at least if they were going on the road, it's a different story. But at least you're at home. You've got the home crowd, the home environment. You want to show up for the fans. I think the defense comes out. Aranda, the coach, is a defensive-minded guy. Used to be the defensive coordinator at LSU. I think the defense shows up in this game. But these offenses are really nothing to get that excited about. I don't think there is a real threat of scoring in this game, at least early. You got BYU coming off of a very high, and you got Baylor coming off of a low. I think it's a slow start in this game offensively, but I think the defenses are at least there to play well and withstand maybe a touchdown or two, maybe. Again, the best bet in this game for me is, where the fuck is my banner? Baylor, BYU, first half under 23-5. I'm sorry, 23.5. I think this is a 13-7 game at halftime at most. For me, that's 2 units. If you're tailing, please tail responsibly and at your own discretion. If you like the play, great. We align, awesome. We're in it together, all right? If it loses, it sucks for all of us. If you're fading, good luck. Actually, I don't mean that, but one of us wins. You know what I mean? We can shake and go on our merry way afterwards. Also, if you're going to any of these games this weekend or in the future, use SeatGeek. It's the best ticketing app out there. I've said this even before. I got a partnership with them. $20 off your first purchase, promo code DGen. Good luck this weekend. As I said, cherish every college football weekend. I am not looking forward to having to analyze fucking Ish Smith's assist prop in a few weeks. All right, let's take advantage, bet responsibly, and good luck.